Good evening. Welcome. Buongiorno. Another episode of Cultural Connection. Alex Donald once again is unavailable as he is too busy celebrating his Miami Dolphins win, which is kind of taking away the wounds of drawing against Sampdoria. I got Joe Usello and I got Vito Doria here. Joe, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, no, thank you. I know what we're here to be blessed to talk about your loss, and I can't kind of like insult you because my team sucked just as bad. I don't know who sucked more, Lazio or Juventus, because one
Well,
was.
what would you say? Chesney? Chesney sucked more. That's
I guess you could say that. But Vito, I know that you tied against Inter, but you must be ecstatic with that performance. And how you doing tonight, buddy?
Look, in general, could be better. Unfortunately, down here in Melbourne, Australia, we're still having lockdowns, whereas most of the rest of the world, they're starting to open up again with better vaccination rates. But that being said, at least with the football back, having Serie A and all the European leagues in action, that's some sort of distraction. As for Samp, look, I wouldn't say I'm ecstatic. Happy we did get the draw, but I still had that strong feeling that Inter were there for the taking, and some should have got the 3 points. I really think this was the chance to get our first win for the season.
Well, since we're on the topic, I don't like the idea that Sampdoria was lucky because Inter had five guys who were in the South American playing and they didn't have players available. That's just a BS excuse. At the end of the day, when you spend six times the amount that Sampdoria spends, and the quality of personnel that you had on the pitch, plus the players that they brought on, there's no excuse. Inter should be ready to win this match. I thought Sampdoria came prepared. They looked not intimidated, and a lot of credit to their manager, Roberto De Versa. We were saying before that offline that I'm a big fan of him because anybody who's able to take a club such as Parma from Serie C all the way up to Serie A speaks highly about a manager and what he's able to do and kept them up in top flight. And had he never been fired, I think that Parma still to this day would be in Serie A. You look at Semplici, another candidate was Ball. I think it was Serie D who he started with and went to Serie A. So two managers I always talk about. But Joe, what were your thoughts about how Sampdoria kind of approached this game and managed to get a draw?
well. I only got the chance to catch some of the highlights because it was on at 6:30 in the morning here, as you know. So I caught some of the highlights. I thought their approach was good. Inter, you've got to kind of just hunker down against them, and Samp did a good job of that. You're right. Trading goals back and forth like they did over the course of the match. The match was there for Samp to take. But ultimately in the end, 2-2 draws against the defending champions is not, anything to be ashamed of. That's a pretty good result.
No, absolutely. And Vito, what player actually stood out for you the most during this match? I thought Bierzinski was my man in the match because that cross that he makes, it's not even the delivery is amazing. And I watched the goal maybe 3 or 4 times, and it's that kind of like that flick pass he makes to himself. And he gets around Hakan Çalhanoğlu and embarrasses him, and then the execution is great. The goal is sublime, but I thought he was just great on the back end, on the front end. He's just effective everywhere, and I thought this guy is really has grown as a player.
Oh, it's been a great growth by him. I think this game in particular was one of his very best performances, if not the best. I noticed that in a lot of the game ratings in the Italian press that they gave Augello the best rating. And I thought, a lot of that would be due to the goal. And he did play well, Augello on the left, but Bereszynski was superb. He was doing things I never thought that he was capable of doing, to be honest. Not only effective on the ball, but he did some nice flicks and even did a nice dummy later on. So he also was a fundamental part of that goal for 2-2 with the assist, that cross. But just in general, I thought Bereszynski and Kandreva were a big threat on the right flank.
So we got Gerald here who says basically, I'm not sure if you guys saw that Candreva kind of threw the ball at, I think it was a manager of Inter. I'm not sure who it was, but it was kind of disrespectful. And I'd like to hear what your thoughts were because it's something that's not really needed part of the game. How about you, Joe?
I'm sorry, I was checking out the comments. What was it?
No worries. It's basically yesterday, Candreva kind of like on the sideline, he threw the ball at, I believe, at one of Inter's managers or assistants. I'm not sure who, but it's kind of something that's not really needed. And he was having a good game, and you kind of throw your performance away when you do stupidity like that, especially that you played for this team, and you should show that mutual respect, right?
That's exactly what was going to be my point. It almost becomes a little childish when you've seen so many players time and time again. They don't celebrate goals against their former clubs and that sort of thing. So to see Candreva react like that was different. You know what I mean? It wasn't normal. And yeah, who knows? I mean, I haven't gotten the backstory on it just yet, but it certainly was something that was out of the ordinary to see, to say the least.
No, absolutely. I'd like to hear your take as well, Vito.
Oh, sorry about that. What I was going to say is that, I was a bit surprised that Candreva would do that, especially because he's an experienced part of the team. In those situations, that's where emotions, boil over, and there's no need to throw a ball at the coaching staff like that. So I think it's just, in those moments, I mean, you do all your talking, you're arguing, but you don't resort to those kind of measures. So it's, unfortunately, you just got to sort of suck it up, and then you channel your aggression in a better way, become more determined on the pitch to either put in the right tackles or put in a good cross, score goals. Just to throw a ball at coaching staff who's real, regardless of what might have came out of his mouth, it's not necessary to do that. Just focus on the game, focus on beating your opponent, and ultimately that's when you let the scoreboard do the talking at the end.
Well, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
I just want real quick, it's almost South American. You know what I mean? The way that works, the way that happens, it's almost South American. You expect that in a Boca River match. You don't expect it at Samp Inter, which is, that's, as soon as just thinking about it, it's like, where are we, at La Bombonera, or are we really, where the hell are we right now? Are we in Genoa? I have no idea.
But then you go on the other side, and I think the biggest glaring issue you got to look at Inter now is their goalkeeping. And I thought Samir Handanovic had another stinker for me. The first goal that's conceded, I personally believe, and I know a lot of people have called me out on Twitter for this, that he didn't have a chance for the ball. If you watch every set piece, every corner kick, who is the first person to attempt for the ball? It's the goalkeeper. 99% of the time, you see someone challenge, swat the ball away. Prime example, I would say, is Pepe Reina. 39 years old and still making an effort to he's always the first one to put his body on the line to make a challenge. I think on that goal there, Handanovic has to come out because he has to make an attempt to be that extra body to try to do something to help his defense. Because now look, it lands in the box and it becomes a vulnerable, like a loose ball that anybody can get a chance off, and it becomes a ricochet. And Sampdoria gets life. They tie the game. Well-deserved goal, I would say. But I'd like to hear what you guys, because there's another sequence in the second half where Candreva makes an innocent shot near the corner flag on Handanovic and gets he just gets caught off guard. Doesn't make the save properly. I think it resulted in a rebound, but I think the play kind of went dead because it was offside and it was just non-existent. But still, for me, Handanovic no longer can be the starting goalkeeper. And the biggest issue with Simone Inzaghi is he has his favorites. And I don't know how long he can go with Handanovic if he continues like this. And I think that Radu should get a start. I know people are going to say that, we don't know what Radu can bring. You gotta try something different because this Handanovic experiment is done. And I'll start with you, Joe. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen this slip from Handanovic probably over the last, I'd say, 2 or 3 years. Up until then, easily one of the top 2 or 3 goalkeepers in Italy, right? If not, one of the top 5 or 6 in Europe. But like you said, he's 39 years old. You get to the point where he's just not able to keep up with the play. We saw it happen to Buffon a little bit, towards the end of his Juve career as well. It's something where the game just gets too fast. And even Gerald's in the chat. Handanovic looks scared and makes more mistakes. This is part of getting older and playing at this level and this speed. Is Radu going to be a good substitute? Again, there are a lot of question marks there, right? Because you haven't seen a ton of them over the years. So that's going to be tricky. Does Inter go in the winter window and try to find a goalkeeper to kind of fill this need, especially if they're still running through Champions League? You might see that. I don't know. I mean, right now, as a Juventino, I would say we're going to do that first, and screw you, you're not getting there. But this is the swan song for Handanovic, and I think Inter has got to be looking at this position as a top priority, whether it be this winter or next summer, to continue to improve the club.
Vito, what are your thoughts on how Handanovic played yesterday? Because you watched the game yourself, so I'd like to hear what you think.
Oh, he has been showing some signs of decline for some time. The way Inter's defense is structured, especially since Antonio Conte was there, I think he's been very well protected. And with the same defensive trio there, they should offer the same protection under Simone Inzaghi. There were those moments, as you mentioned, where Handanovic did look very shaky, and I think he was very lucky that he only conceded 2 goals. There was that particular cross you were talking about from Candreva. I honestly thought he was going to slip that because he's been such a liability. There are people out there that might be thinking what Radu could possibly offer, but Radu had a good loan spell at Genoa for a 6-month spell. I think it was in the 2019-20 season, and then for some reason they brought Perin in, probably because he was more experienced. But I think Radu's a capable goalkeeper, and I think it's time to maybe give him a chance, because Inzaghi has to ask himself whether Handanovic is worth keeping in the team, if he's going to be costing Inter more goals. And that's why I also felt that Inter were there for the taking. I think that if Sampdoria got more shots on target, that Handanovic was due to spill 1 or 2 of them. And I reckon it's going to be a continuing trend for the Nerazzurri if opposition attacks are able to breach the backline more often than not.
I just want to add to Vito there. I would ask you guys, I think that the back line, the back three, has been one of the best back threes in Europe coming in from last season. And it kind of disguises a lot of the faults that Handanovic has when you've got such big quality, fast, intelligent defenders back there like Bastoni, like De Vrij, and Skriniar. I think it disguises a lot of the faults that Handanovic had. And now I guess we're starting to see them kind of pop up as we go through the season.
No, absolutely. And because we have Vito on, I like to, just off topic here, ask your opinion of how Sampdoria's transfer market went, because I've had a lot of, and I'll ask you, Joe, after how you thought Juventus did too, but because I've been able to ask people about Inter, Lazio, Milan, and I never got around to Sampdoria. Now that I finally have you on, and I always like to go to the mid-table teams, because a lot of people always neglect these kind of clubs, and I think that they don't get enough attention, more than they should probably. And I'd like to hear what you think of how Sampdoria did, and did they do enough to, not obviously they didn't do enough to do a Europa League spot. Let's be realistic here, but do you think that they'll maybe finish further up in the table compared to last year?
Look, to finish in the same position as we did last season or higher, I think would be a big task. Initially, I was thinking it'd be a mammoth task because I was a bit unsure about the Versa, especially what happened with Parma last season. But I think he's at least got a style of play or an identity there. He's built upon what Ranieri has left, and he's perhaps made us a bit more attack-minded or less rigid in our play. So I think with the players that he's got now at Samp, he's got a bit more to work with than what he did at Parma, and perhaps we'll see a more fluid side or something that's more pleasing on the eye, because Samp were definitely enjoyable to watch against Inter. As for the Calciomercato specifically, I thought it was pretty bad at first, but I think with some of the late signings, it might be decent. If I really had to put a number on it, I'd say a 6, maybe 6.5. But I think keeping Morton Torsby, who was linked to Watford and Atalanta, keeping him was important, and then Damsgaard staying with some. I think that's a big win. That's just as good as a new transfer because he was arguably the best youngster at Euro 2020, and initially from being linked with $20 million, euro moves, and then he's rumored to go for either 40 or 50 million, and he's been linked with some big clubs around Europe. I think to keep him on is a big win for Samp, and if he can rediscover that form, I think he'll be supplying plenty of assists for Quagliarella, Caputo, or some of the other forwards that are on Sampdoria's books.
I like the signing of Caputo, actually. I think that I don't know. I don't know. Maybe you guys feel this. Certain players just need to move on, and they do better in these little like Bologna, no disrespect, like Sampdoria clubs where they just go in their own world and they can just be themselves, play freely. There is no like rigid kind of style that they have to play, and they just become themselves. I really wish that a guy like Marco Parolo had gone to Bologna or Sampdoria and play with kind of those kind of players and continue to play today. But I didn't even know he became a pundit for the Zone. But interesting to know. I found out this morning, which I didn't even know existed. But yeah, you know what? I overall, Damsgaard, I'm surprised that Sampdoria did not cash in on Damsgaard because knowing how stingy their owner is, just as bad as some others, and like to pocket the dollar when they can, maybe it shows a sign of ambition this season, and it's probably encouraging to see for Sampdoria fans. I guess Alex will be later on the show this week, so he will obviously talk about Inter. So I'm going to shift away from Inter overall. I'll just give the star of the game for them was Barella, had another great game and continues to become something. But we're going to look at Juventus. And Joe, yes, we do, because if I am going to get tortured later on with the Lazio performance, which I haven't seen in a long time. I can't say I've never seen, but Juventus 1 point out of 9. I don't think anybody, not even the bookies, probably thought this was going to come. What were your thoughts on Juve's performance this past weekend with Napoli squeezing out a 2-1 win? And I'll be honest, it was a good performance from Napoli, but I also think they were pretty lucky to take the 3 points.
It was, I thought it was a very good performance from the Napoli standpoint. I thought they did a great job constantly pressing the attack. You look at the Juve side missing, what was it, 6 starters from the previous match, although that was the 1-0 loss to Empoli. The big glaring issue right now with Juve is Wojciech Szczesny. We talk about Samir Handanovic having a decline. Szczesny's been the exact same thing. He's always good for a gaff or two every now and again, but really starting to see it more. And even when you look at the start of this season, 3 matches, 2 of them they should have won. Udinese and Empoli are going to be fighting it out to stay in the Serie A. I can accept the Napoli loss. You go down to the Maradona, that's going to be a tough spot to play in. You play that first match coming back off the break. You got players coming from South America. You've got players that have moved around. You're going to have a little difficulty getting them to mesh and then play somebody so big as Napoli. So I would have expected them to lose or at least draw Napoli. The problem with Juve is where we've started. You're starting to see Max Allegri's influence come in on the team. You see that kind of, my brother's going to talk about this, that boring style of soccer, right? It's just so vanilla and so bland. But right now, that's what they need. Because that brand of soccer is also stable. When you talk about Sarri, you talk about Pirlo, who really, was certainly out of his depth. There was a lot of questions, and yeah, it looked good from time to time, but there was a lot of questions. Now we bring back Max Allegri. We put that stability back in. It just hasn't, turned into wins just yet, and they've got a tough run coming up. Obviously Malmo tomorrow, for Champions League. And then, I looked at the schedule real quick. AC Milan, Roma. I think they have Samp coming up in there. Torino. They got Inter as well. There's some big matchups. If Juve doesn't correct this soon, it's going to be a big deal, because you're starting to let those teams that are naturally going to finish at the top of the table get ahead of you if they beat you. And I'm talking about Roma, I'm talking about Milan, I'm talking about Inter. You can't let those teams get away from this point. You can end this season very early if that happens. So it's on Max and the club to figure out what to do to make this blend and gel. I think the Malmo match, to me, honestly, comes at a great time. I know that Max Allegri, rested a bunch of players going into this match. Rested Dybala coming back from South America, rested Chiesa, rested Cuadrado coming back from South America as well. There was a lot of that going on. A win in the Champions League to open the group stages would go a very, very long way in this one. I also think coming back into the league, they're going to end up with Milan on Sunday, if I remember correctly. I think Mattia Perin has to start. I think he needs to play against AC Milan in that match on Sunday. I don't think you can let Chesney go, call it a break. He was on international duty, whatever. I don't care. But you've got to give Perin a chance at this point, because it's not going well. And you're losing confidence. The players in front of Chesney are losing confidence in him. And that's going to be one of the worst things you could have. So we'll see. It's going to take some time to turn it around, but they've got to get it done quickly.
I like that point. I think the biggest point you said around is confidence. And if your goalkeeper is weak, your team is weak. And I'll say another point where you said was really good before, Inter's back line. It kind of takes that away and doesn't show that vulnerable kind of weakness that Juventus has, that Inter really does have as well, but is negated because of their back line. And it's the best back line probably in Serie A. Let's be honest here. And with an aging Chiellini and Bonucci, they're not going to be the same pair as it was in the Euros. Your mentality, your intensity, your drive is on another level. People don't understand like that kind of. I can see that happening one more time from Chiellini and Bonucci, because when you go to the World Cup, your mindset, you approach differently, and you're surrounded by better players too. No disrespect, like De Sciglio is not what Juventus. It's not Juventus. Arugani is not Juventus. De Ligt is Juventus. I personally rate him highly. I'm biased. I think Bastoni is a better defender. I will be honest, but I don't look at trophies. But it's always a cheap shot. I just for jokes, but still, I think that with not a great back end and with a weak goalkeeper on top of that, it's something to really consider. And I also do agree with you with the fact that Allegri is. I don't like when he wins. He's up 1-0. You don't sit back for 90 minutes. Like if you score the first goal in the second minute, he's sitting back for 88 minutes. This is not 5 years ago where every team in the Serie A sucked ass, and you can just take advantage of such weak teams that they can't break you down because they don't have the quality. Roma, if you let Roma. I haven't watched a game of Roma, and I heard that they're playing outstanding. So I'm not going to diss them because they're 3-0, and no Lazio banter coming towards them from me because they have earned the respect right now. You got Inter, who looks much better. You got I'm on the fence about Atalanta right now. I know you always burn me on that one, so
I'm high on them always.
You're always high on them always. Milan, we'll talk about them after, but that's another team. And Juventus has to wake up. You're right. And I think at the end of the day, there has to be a leader on this team who is going to turn it around. And I think that starts with Dybala. And if Dybala doesn't become that leader, that focal point, I know that people are saying, how do you fit him in? He doesn't fit in a 4-3-3. You put a 4-4-2. Well, guess what? That's why Allegri is there. He's there and gets paid the big dollars to figure out how to put these guys together. And I think in the long term, he will figure out where to put Dybala best.
I'll actually, I want to make a point on that. So I'm going to make a point by saying, let's substitute. Let's take away Dybala and let's put Lionel Messi. Okay. If Lionel Messi was at Juve, don't you find a place for him to play? And odds are you can put him in a 4-3-3 and just let Messi do Messi things, right? Mm-hmm. Lionel Messi is the biggest roadblock to Paulo Dybala playing for the Argentinian national team. They play the same spot. They literally play the same spot in the same style. So, it's not so much Dybala. Let Dybala be Dybala. That's the thing. Let him do what he does. And he's a massively creative player. I think you let him go, especially with Chiesa on any of the wings. I mean, come on, this is crazy. We should be scoring, 4 or 5 goals a match. But let Dybala do Dybala things, and you'll get rewarded for that. And I think that's one thing Max Allegri did in his first stint at Juve, which made Dybala so successful. And I think it kind of got away from him when Sarri and Pirlo were there, and now it's time for him to grow back into that role. But I think he's got the right coach to do it.
No, absolutely. And I can keep going, but I want to hear Vito's take of the match on Saturday, if you were able to catch it between Napoli and Juventus, and how does Juventus kind of turn this around?
I did watch that game, and it was a disappointing performance from Juve. They were able to generate some chances from the counter-attacks they did have, but again, it goes to show that Allegri is still trying to work out what his best team is and how to best structure them. The problem for Juventus for the last 5 years or so has been the midfield. There are a lot of players who are either workhorses or more defensive-minded mids, but there isn't a lot of ball-playing midfielders, a lot of creativity there, so that's a big issue. A lot of the other players they brought in, especially on these free transfers when Fabio Paratici was there, they were mostly guys that would be good sidekicks, or they would complement players that would be there already, but they weren't players who are genuine leaders or guys who are true match winners. They're not big difference makers. Guys like, if we're talking generalities, we're talking a guy like Rabiot. He's not a match winner. Okay, and then even if they're not the free transfers, but you got someone like McKennie. He can play a role, but he's not a match winner. And Ramsey might have done good things at Arsenal, but he's always been injury prone at Juve. So he's not a guy that Juve can turn to going forward. If we look at the formation, 4-3-3, I don't think it's the right one. I'd personally go 4-2-3-1, so you can minimize the amount of midfielders you have. Make sure Locatelli is a certain starter because he's got the quality and I think he can improve. But it's really about Allegri deciding who should partner him in that pivot. And then I think for that sort of front quartet, I think he's got the options. You play either Morata or Kane up front. You can have either Bernardeschi, Chiesa, or Kulusevski on the right. Dybala as trequartista, and then on the left, Chiesa can play on the left, or could even force Kane on the left. So up front, there are the options. And in the 2016-2017 season, I saw that Allegri went down that path and it was working. He had, I think it was Cuadrado on the right wing, Dybala as trequartista, Mandzukic was that tall left winger there, and he ran his socks off, and then Higuain was up front, and they reached the Champions League finals. So I think in that regard, maybe that's the path Allegri has to take again, and it could work.
I won't take credit, guys. I didn't watch a lot of football before 2017, 2018. I always say on this pod, I don't like to brag and be someone who I'm not and talk about crap out of my what. But for me, I respect that opinion, and I wish Mandzukic probably stayed last season. I think that had he started the year off with Juventus and never even left in the first place, could have been a really beneficial player to help them. I know that he's gone down in age, but when you don't play for a year, it kills you. I'm sorry, man. It's like having a car that is amazing. You turn it off for 2 years and you turn it back on. What are you going to get? It's going to take a while till the car starts pumping again because it's just been idolized. As for formations, I'm not an expert. I do appreciate what you said there, Vito. 4-3-3 maybe doesn't work, but maybe, what do you think, Joe? What kind of formation would you go? Because I like to hear you.
No, Vito's spot on. In the 4-2-3-1, you put Locatelli in the pivot with you could do Weston McKennie. We've seen him play that for the U.S. national team. You could do it with McKennie. You could do it with Betancourt. You could do it with Rabiot as well. You've got options to do that in that pivot spot. Again, like Vito said, the front, the 3 and the 1, they kind of just they play themselves. Real simple. Morata or Moise Kean up top. Dybala is the trequartista. You could put Bernardeschi on one side, Chiesa on the other side. You can go to Kulusevski. It doesn't matter. Pick your poison. I think one of the keys is, Chiesa has to be in that lineup or that discussion. Dybala has to be in that discussion, period. All the other parts are optional. They're interchangeable, but those 2 pieces are the key. And Vito, you brought up a great point about Mario Mandzukic. That year they went to the Champions League final because Mario Mandzukic was traditionally the number 9, and that's how he played. Just that guy that could hold up play, and traditional number 9 was Mario Mandzukic. When they asked him to go out and play on the wing, he picked up defensive responsibilities he didn't have in the number 9 and was fantastic with them. I always find like an MVP, a guy on Juve that you don't expect. Last year it was Danilo. Danilo played, I think he played every spot but keeper. Okay. The year before was Juan Cuadrado. Juan Cuadrado has played every single position on the pitch. Mario Mandzukic was that guy. He was the guy that said, okay, I'll play on the wing. I can go and play wing back. I can go and play number 9. I'll play wherever you want me to play. And those types of players they don't really exist that often anymore. And I think, granted, Juve has not been as successful as they have been in the past, over the last 18 months, but their success is based on players like that being able to step into other roles and perform them respectfully. And it started with a guy like Mandzukic. It's continued through Cuadrado, through Danilo, and we'll have to see where it goes from here. But yeah, Vito was spot on. 4-2-3-1. And I think, like I said, Chiesa and Dybala have to be on the pitch no matter what.
I actually have a question for you, both of you, actually. Rodrigo Bentancur, what happened to him? Because I remember that he was one of their best midfielders, I want to say 2 seasons ago. Last year, he was very bad. I think it was the season before that where he was playing lights out. Like, I thought he had a great year. Value was very high. I remember he picked up an injury versus Lazio at the Stadio Olimpico in the first half. And when he went off, that's when the game opened up for Lazio, and it allowed them to be more effective. And they started to dominate space, control possession. And I'd just like to hear your take as to what has kind of created a decline for him. I think that this guy's young still. He's in his 20s. Like, you can't just write him off. I don't think he's completely done and that's all. But there's something that happened to his game, and we know he played in the South American League. Then, and you're an expert with the South American League, you and Roberto. So maybe you have some shine on this, because it's easy to knock a guy down when he's at his worst, and it's very hard to pick him up when he's not at his best.
Yeah, I mean, for Betancourt, I think ultimately we've seen him peak. I think there's certain levels that players get to, and you're like, okay, that's the top of their game that they're going to give you for their career. I think with Betancourt, we've gotten there. I think we are at the peak. It's not. I think we thought the upside was much higher with him, and it's not. I also think that the changes from coach to coach to coach with a young player can wreak havoc on a player's game. And I think he's been one of the the sufferers from that, going from Allegri, where he was successful, to Sarri, who's more offensive minded, to Pirlo, who's more offensive minded. He's a number 6. He's a guy that's supposed to dig in the trenches and win you the ball back. The lapse of a couple years really did him no justice in terms of his mental game, right? His ability to see the game, to see the way things turn out, and then to attack accordingly. And we've seen, over the last year or so, some really bad plays from Betancourt. I think ultimately, I think he's just hit his peak. I think we expected more from him than we got. I think we all saw Claudio Marchisio in Rodrigo Betancourt, and they're definitely not the same player. And unfortunately, you don't want to hold it against Betancourt. He is a good player. He goes to any other team in the Serie A, he probably starts, right? I mean, so it's not like he's a terrible player. It's just, I think that he has run his course, and this is the best Betancourt you're going to get.
How about you, Vito? Just like to hear an outsider opinion as well.
Considering that is, he's 24 years old. He's still got a chance to establish himself as a footballer, but perhaps Joe is right, and maybe for Juve at least, he's probably hit his ceiling at that club. And looking at the way the club is now, or the squad anyway, perhaps maybe at the end of this season or the one after, he might have to look for a move elsewhere, because I don't think he's a guy that can boss the midfield. He can be the man. Like I was saying earlier, I think Bentancur is another one of those guys who is a good sidekick, but going forward, I think it will take a lot of improvement from him if he is to stay, and be up to Allegri to see if he can either work on his mental approach, or even if it's a more technical thing, to see if he can actually fit into this first side for the remainder of the season, because he did play poorly last season, and when Sarri was there, he had a good year, but it was a bit concerning to see how he regressed under Andrea Pirlo.
And before I ask, maybe for Napoli fans who probably want me to maybe cover a thing or two about them, but the last thing I'll ask is, do you start Perin tomorrow, or is it tomorrow, or is it Wednesday? When do they play? Wednesday, right?
Tomorrow. Juve plays tomorrow.
Do you start Perin, or do you go with Chesney and hopefully he regains confidence? I'll make it simple. Perin starts. You got to give him a chance, and I don't care about Champions League experience. This guy, when you watched him play for Genoa, this guy played lights out. He's a confidence goalkeeper. He's been called up to the international team. I think he has the material to be a Juventus number one. If he can grab that position, look out, because he could be the backup to Donnarumma for the World Cup in the long term.
Double-edged sword, isn't it? I mean, if you start Perin tomorrow over Szczesny, what does that do for the confidence of Szczesny? What if Perin has a bad game against a team that, let's be honest, Juve's supposed to win tomorrow? I mean, and it's not even supposed to be close. It should be 3-0, 4-0. So, do you shake Szczesny's confidence? Do you put Perin in? He makes a couple of mistakes. Maybe they win, 3-2. Maybe they even draw 2-2. My God. And then now you're looking at a situation where Szczesny has no confidence, Perin has no confidence, and you're moving into that match against AC Milan with two guys that don't even know if they can stop the ball. It's a double-edged sword. For me, I think Szczesny starts tomorrow. I think you have to start him. He's your number one. You're going to go to the dance with the girl. You better dance with her. But I think going into that AC Milan match on Sunday, I think Perin should start that match on Sunday, and see how it goes from there. This is a spot where you can actually destroy both goalkeepers, or you can build both goalkeepers. And I think starting Szczesny tomorrow and starting Perin on Sunday is the way to progress down, building up both goalkeepers. And then Max has a good problem if they both catch form.
No, that's a good point. Vito, what do you think, man? Do you go with Perin, or do you go the Szczesny, who likes to play fumble?
I think they've got to cut their losses regarding Szczesny, and they have to start Perin. Perin's done the hard yards over the years, especially with those seasons at Genoa. And maybe when he arrived at Juventus initially, it wasn't the right time, but I think now you've got to just throw him in and back him. Szczesny has shown over his career that he can have his good spells, but whether it's right now or back when he was at Arsenal, he showed his vulnerabilities. And a club like Juventus, who is very intolerant of failure, Allegri can't allow Szczesny to keep falling like he has. It's important to bring some stability to the backline, as we've been discussing before. And even if Perin is more your traditional goalkeeper, just someone who stays on the line and pulls off saves, that's what you really need. You need someone who's going to be a safe pair of hands. And Szczesny clearly is not that at the moment.
And I just want to throw on top of what Vito said, Szczesny's not the guy with the safest hands right now, but Perin has traditionally been more of a shot stopper than like a thinking goalkeeper. I mean, Buffon was a thinking goalkeeper, play with his feet. He played intelligently, and he was a shot stopper. That's what makes him that upper echelon of goalkeeper. Perin has the shot stopping capabilities. He can save almost anything. And I think that kind of player does add a lot of confidence to a back line. Although this is one of the most experienced back lines in the world, he adds a lot of support to a back line like that because they know he can make the save. They just wanted to add that as a point.
No, that's a good point. And there's one talking point I have for Napoli. I had to actually pull up the actual lineup because I forgot his name, and it's Anguissa. And this guy was the player of the game for Napoli for me. I think this. I know. Credit to Carlo Garganese on his pod. I believe it's called the Italian Forza podcast. I always butcher that name. I always forget the actual words, but he said a good point that he played against a Juventus midfield that is not the greatest. But at the end of the day, he still came in his first game, short notice, hadn't had a lot of time to practice with Napoli, and he has kickstart beautifully. I thought his challenges were good. He showed good speed, recovery. He covered a lot of space to win so many Scudettos, and I thought this guy was really outstanding. And I'd like to hear what you guys thought about Guisa because I think he's the next Serie A player to look out for and up and coming. I'd like to hear from you, Joe.
He was impressive. If I remember correctly, they brought him in to replace Timo Bakayoko, who went back to Chelsea, and then I think he went to Milan, if I'm not mistaken. And he was incredible. I mean, he was digging out every ball, winning every 50-50 ball. He didn't let any opportunity go unturned, and he made Juve's midfield suffer for 90 minutes. Really made them suffer. Total star of the game. I like that. I see the comment in the chat there. Gerald says, "Welcome to Inter, Anguissa." So we'll have to see if that ever happens. But yeah, he was impressive. And if he continues to play like that, he's going to become one of the best defensive midfielders in the Serie A.
How about you, Vito? What did you think about him?
Yeah, he had a good debut. Not only is he a good ball winner, but he's actually comfortable when he has the ball at his feet. And there was at least a moment or two where he did a few good turns on the ball. So when you have a defensive mid that can break up the opposition's play, but also be comfortable on the ball and play a part in the attacking play of their own team, that's a good plus. After Diego Demme suffered a preseason injury, I think they needed someone like Anguissa and to make sure that they have that sort of defensive cover so the attacking weapons can go on and do those pretty things and go on and score those goals, because Napoli have been one of the league's entertainers for several years now. But a little bit of that defensive solidarity in the midfield helps, and Anguissa, he might be handy in both phases of the game. So I think, it's a good purchase on Napoli's part, and he might be important for them. As for the Partenope's transfer market in general, I'd probably say the only weakness for them is the left-back position. Mario Rui, he worked hard against Juve, but still his decision-making and even his ball use can be a letdown. So if the Napoli are going to challenge for their third Scudetto in their history, I think left-back might be where they're going to be exposed. But the rest of the team looks very good.
No, absolutely. And I know that I ripped on Joe earlier in the show, but now the heat turns to me, and Lazio were dreadful. Let's be honest, they were worse than Juve because not one area of the pitch were they good. Let's be honest. And did you guys catch the Lazio Milan game by any chance, or catch any glimpses of it?
I caught some of it. I was impressed by Zlatan Ibrahimovic and his goal. Amazing timing on his run. I was surprised from the amount of play that I saw. When you had the pod the other night, we talked about SMS, Sergei Milinkovic-Savic. He was almost non-existent for me in the match, which I was kind of shocked because he's always a player that's involved. You always see him, do his thing. I was shocked that his name wasn't nearly called as often as I expected it to. I think losing Correa is a big deal for Lazio right now. I think, you're putting it on Luis Alberto, you're putting it on Ciro Immobile, and there's not a ton after that now. And Correa had added that nice depth to the squad that they don't quite have now. I mean, they've got to get it turned around. New coach, right? Maurizio Sarri comes in. His ideas are different. Sarri ball always takes a little time to learn. There's going to be some growing pains, but I think I was kind of shocked that they let Simone Inzaghi go to Inter, because they held on to Milinkovic-Savic for so long that you could see they were building this project around him. And to suddenly let the architect of the project go, well, I thought was very, very strange. And now the project has no leader. So what do we do with Milinkovic-Savic? What do we do with those guys? That's going to be the big question for Lazio coming up. But they've, Saudi ball takes time to learn. It's growing pains right now. Hopefully within the next 6 to 7 matches, they figure it out. But that's probably what it's going to take to start.
That's why I think that Europa League is really important, because those have to be like practice matches where they need to take it serious, and that those are the progression games where you need to, like, you know what I mean? Like it's like those mid scrimmage games where you get a chance to like adapt and understand more of what Sarri is kind of asking from you. I think at the end of the day, Savage is the leader of this team. They are going to build around him, but you got to give full credit to Milan, because this is a manager, Stefano Pioli, where people every year say, "Oh, he's going to get fired. Oh, he's going to get fired." He's in his third season, second full season, because he took over 2 years ago, and I think that this team continues to progress. Look at Sandro Tonali, day and night, was one of the worst midfielders last year. This year, one of the best so far. Brahim Diaz has looked really good with Milan. But like I said earlier, Frank Kessié was the star of the game for me, because he made Savage non-existent. His best opportunity came, I believe, in the first half off a header where he had to really fight hard, and it was a routine save. Our back end, skeptical. Cherby is not the same player like he was. We never addressed this position for a second successive season. Now we're vulnerable. Patrick playing center back, not a natural center back. You got Vavro, who hasn't settled in yet since arriving from the Danish league. There are a lot of questions. I do believe that their midfield is still, and their forwards is still deep. You got Zaccani, who came in. I think that in time he will settle in. He'll replace Correa. Pedro has looked like the best signing so far after 3 games. I'm impressed with what he has been able to do. You got Felipe Anderson, who's very inconsistent, non-existing yesterday, but was great against Spezia. And then in the midfield, you got Toma Basic, who arrived from Bordeaux. I think that he will be a good backup player in the midfield. And the last glaring hole is Lucas Leiva. That's the biggest issue yesterday, is that we don't have a central defensive midfielder, or not even that, just that holding midfielder in the middle to kind of play what Sarri wants. He's not that guy. He can't be a Jorginho, where he's very still good defensively and can produce on the offensive attack as well. I think I don't know all the time where people should play. If you were to ask me, I would put Savage in that role. I think Savage should be playing in Lucas Leiva's position in the middle. And I know that maybe it doesn't make sense, but the way he plays as a box-to-box midfielder, where he's good defensively, can track back, and he can advance the ball forward, I think that's the guy where it has to build around. And you were just saying that Savage was the leader. He was the project around it. With Savage, that's the guy. Lucas Leiva is a non-existent player who has to come off the bench for 30 minutes. And it's not his fault. He's 34 years old, and they never got a proper backup to him in the last 5 seasons under Simone Inzaghi. He came in, did his job to replace Lucas Biglia. In his first 2 or 3 seasons, he was dynamite. But when you play a guy day in and day out, and in that position, which I think is the hardest position of all of football as a central defensive midfielder, because your task is to cover a lot of ground, and you're responsible not only for the back end, but to make sure that you advance the ball first in transition. So there's just a lot of glaring holes. And at the end of the day, there's no excuses. Milan was the better team. Milan came to play. They played a high press, very quick, Lazio can't play off a high press, quick game. They look slow, not enough time to react. Milan has come a long way. I don't want to take anything away from them. There's no pity excuses here. Credit to them. Congrats to Richard and Frank and the rest of those Milan guys. You know who I know, and the list can go on. I can be here doing an award nomination. But Vito, you watched the game. I'm done ranting because I was able to express how I feel. What were your thoughts on the game?
Look, I saw bits and pieces of it, but my father actually watched the whole thing. But Milan did look like the more dominant team, and I think they were really worthy of the win. Lazio had to face the biggest test so far because, as impressive as they were in the first two rounds, you could argue that the opponents they had to face were teams that are likely to be fighting for relegation. That being said, I think it's important that Lazio do get that early test so they see where they're progressing, where they're going wrong, like you've just addressed, and perhaps Sarri can build upon that. If it's not about individuals, maybe it's about dealing with certain situations, what to do in this moment, what to do in that moment. So if Sarri can see what's wrong there and how the players should move or combine, then I think he's got the weapons to make Sarri's more work at Lazio.
Hey, anything you want to bounce off, Joe?
No, I think Vito summed it up perfectly. You know, it's especially like you also said that Sergei Milinkovic-Savic needs to be that, you know, that position. They might need to go look for a number 6, somebody that can kind of rove the midfield and really gobble things up. I think that would be a massive piece for Milan, because I'm sorry, not Milan, for Lazio, because you saw that's where they lacked the fortitude that they needed to hold off AC Milan in that match on the weekend. All I can offer you, Jerry, is that on Sunday we're going to get revenge for you, and Juve will do the job, and you'll be avenged. Let's put it that way.
I think that David Luiz should have been signed by Lazio. I know people are saying that he's a liability, he makes errors, but you got to look at it like this. It's a Latito signing deal, guys. He's a free transfer. You budget around his wages. He's on a 1-year deal. You don't have to rely on him to play every game, but he's there to help and give back up to Lucas Leiva. The most important thing is he had a productive season under Sarri at Chelsea. Just like Pedro had a good season under Sarri. These are Sarri players who know how to play under Sarri, who have that chemistry, that familiarity under him. Those are the type of things. We were talking about this on Saturday, Joe. And I just believe that experience plays a lot. Luiz is the guy who I would have signed if I were Lazio. But a guy like Ribery, no, I would not sign him, because I wrote an article about him, and the guy can't stay healthy if his life depended on it. Okay, the guy is that's the difference. Like, I don't care. I don't care what he can do. He's not the issue. So he's not the solution to Lazio's problems. He's just an extra body to take up a spot. We need bodies who should come in. Ribery was already covered with Zaccagni, Pedro, and Felipe Anderson, which I do believe are all upgrades. Again, Luiz, I know I love to hear your take, but Luiz is the guy for me.
Not to say I hate him, but I hate him. I just, the problem that I have with David Luiz is that he's, what position do you play in? He plays central defender. He plays the same place as Giorgio Chiellini, Virgil van Dijk, Sergio Ramos. I mean, the list goes on and on. That's what he's supposed to look like, right? And he doesn't look like that. He is not capable of being a solid core defender. And we're talking about a position that, is very, very valuable. When we talk about assembling a football team onto the pitch, we talk about the spine or the core of the team. And what does that mean? That means the 2 central defenders. It means whatever midfielder you've got in your number 9 and the number 10 behind them. This is the core that every successful team has, superstars in, or they blend so well. David Luiz is the weakest link at that point in a setup, because he is not capable of playing the position he needs to play. I mean, you want to move him into the number 6. If he could keep up, I guess that wouldn't be a bad idea. Maybe your defensive midfielder that you're looking for, that's a potential. But my God, to put him on the back 4 or back 3, forget it. No thanks, man. We'll be hemorrhaging goals all day.
Well, go ahead, Vito.
Oh, look, I agree with Joe to a degree, especially with the whole centre back stuff. David Luiz, I think maybe for other leagues you could have get away with him with playing as a centre back, because the way the modern game is, they love all these ball playing defenders and all that stuff. But he is a guy that is vulnerable and can be beaten. This is why I reckon this concept of David Luiz as a number 6 would be more convenient, because I think at least with the back 4, he gets some protection, but playing him further forward, he can help playing in a more creative role. So I think he might have just the basics to do some defensive stuff, but have a use of his technical qualities, and he can hit a decent free kick too. So I think as a deep line playmaker, even if it's just for one season, he can be a handy asset. And I think if he's rejuvenated in that way, I think that would be a stroke of genius. Just to go a bit off topic, it reminds me a little bit of Gerard Piqué. I've never rated Piqué either. I mean, he's been part of a great Barcelona team, a great Spanish team, but I think if he played in a different country, or especially if he played in Italy, I don't think he'd be a centre-back for Italian football. I think with his technical qualities, he's a player that would have been a better defensive mid, to be honest, or more creative player, because he's actually good with the ball at his feet. So again, David Luiz, Gerard Piqué, 2 guys who are probably not amongst the Italian perception of defenders, or they don't feel like they belong in that way. But I think they're the kind of players that, if rejuvenated in the right way and with the right coach, and in the case of David Luiz, who knows, it might actually have a positive benefit, and whoever can get a result out of that, like I said, would be a genius.
The only reservation I would have with Gerard Piqué, because I think you bring up a great point, especially Piqué is definitely way more defensive minded than David Luiz. With Piqué, I would wonder if he has the legs to man that position. One thing David Luiz does have going for him is that he is very quick. He's not incredibly slow of foot. I think that's where he becomes very intriguing in the number 6. I don't know that Gerard Piqué has the pace that position demands. That would be my only concern. But yeah, Gerard Piqué would certainly be another great shout out to be able to play that position and really rove that number 6 spot.
But here's the other thing I look at for Luiz. Do you use Patrick, like I said earlier? You got Patrick who's playing out of position, and he's a good depth option. I'll give him that. He works hard, gives you that morale. I think that's very important for any team. But he's not a natural center back. He plays right back or right wing or right wing back. So he's playing out. He's too small as a center back. Then you got Dennis Vavro, who hasn't really settled in with Lazio. Wasted $10 million, I'm going to say. But that's a whole different argument for another day. And now you got 2 center backs who are supposed to be back up to Cherby, and they're not viable options. Like, can you imagine either player played against Milan yesterday? We would have got carved even more, probably. It would have probably been 5-0. So that's why I do believe that Luiz could have been very versatile in multiple occasions and like multiple positions. It could have give that extra depth. But again, it's a deal that never happened and should have happened, in my personal opinion. I know that it's not like you're tied up to him for 4 years and you're trying to figure out, how do I sell this guy? It's a 1-year deal. There's no ties. It works. It doesn't. And the biggest thing, like a lot of people say, a body is a body. You have that extra body if someone goes down. Now, like yesterday, there was a bad injury to Cherby when his leg got clamped on from Bakayoko. I personally think that should have been a red. I'm not sure if you guys saw the play as well. I'm surprised it didn't go to VAR, but those things happen. I know that referees are they're prone to making mistakes. So at the end of the day, that's not the reason why Lazio lost the game. They lost, even if they were down a man, up a man. I think they still would have struggled for some reason. because Milan would have sat back and just attacked on the counter because that's how they scored both their goals. The last point I'm going to close it out as is the racial slurs. If you guys heard or saw on social media, there were some chants towards Bakayoko and Kessie, and I think it still stems back to 2018-19 when Lazio lost 1-0 to Milan at the San Siro, and there were some comments about Cherby saying that we were going to beat them next week, and then they swapped jerseys, Cherby and Kessie, and I think with Bakayoko, and they shaked it off, that it was all good, and they kind of mocked him showing his jersey, and they pointed at it, and since then there's been racial comments towards that. I'm going to speak on the record here that I do not condone these racial slurs. I don't think it's the solution or the banter needed directed towards Bakayoko and Kessie. It's not why I chose Lazio as a team when I was a young kid. My dad growing up, I always say this, that my dad was an Inter fan, didn't know until I was older. And I don't know how I didn't really kind of pay attention to that, but I always asked my dad, where are you from Italy? Because I never knew about it. He was Frosinone. So I always asked my father, who do you cheer for? Do you cheer for Roma? Do you cheer for Lazio? He goes, well, Roma is the capital, Lazio is the provincial. So I always chose Lazio because it's the easier team to choose. Now, I never knew about this whole racist history choosing this team when I was young, because I was only like 10 years old or younger. For one, I've always been a supporter of the club because I stand for the history of how they've won championships, how they built the team, the players that have been able to play for them. I just want to take the time right now to say I'm not a racist person. I don't go to games in the intent of trying to mock players or do anything racially, like any racial abuse. It's not what I am. It's not what most Lazio fans are. It's those older generation ultras who still live in the 60s and believe that fascism is still a thing today. And it's sad that people cannot break their traditions and kind of get out of what they are still in and come with the modern times of football, the modern times of life, that there are people who are trying to change as Lazio fans, and not just Lazio fans, because it's every team that does it, but Lazio is just the easy target because of what they've established throughout the years and what they have created for themselves. They've done it to themselves to become such a social media stream to be known as this. There are teams who do it all the time. I think there was Atalanta last season, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong. Cagliari did some towards Inter. Like there are other, but they don't get the same vision, like the same awareness. Verona with Balotelli, like that. Look, that happened, and that was so big that everybody forgot about it. So my point is I am not a racist guy. I support the team because I love the team. I grew up just choosing them, and I don't ever like to be associated with that. And then because I'm able to have a platform and kind of like voice something positive, not all Lazio fans are like that. Don't generalize all. And that goes for all teams. It's sad that certain people have to ruin it for others throughout all fan bases. And hopefully as a whole, that Serie tries to fix this problem, because it's a problem as a whole in Italy, not just as a club, and it's something that I fear that the league doesn't take serious enough, and I believe that Lazio's punishment will be a $200,000 fine, slap on the wrist. Guys, we didn't hear anything in the stadium. Keep going. So that's where I go from, and maybe if you guys want to kind of bounce back, and feel free.
Vito, you go ahead first.
Okay. Look, in regards to this kind of issue, I think that's one of the great shames that we see, at least on social media, that there is this stereotyping or labeling of certain fans. And I've seen it with you, Jerry, on Twitter, where you get non-Lazio fans labeling you a fascist or a person that believes in those principles of the ultras just because you support Lazio, which I think is unfair. We've fan bases, you get all kinds of people. Not everybody shares the same ideology. And the other thing that these people got to consider, you're not from Rome. You haven't been raised in Rome, and you haven't been sitting in the Curva Nord, sitting with those ultras. So you're going to have one mindset. I mean, you're based in Canada. You're the son of an immigrant, so you're going to look at things differently. And that's the same with everybody else. Whether you're a supporter like Joe, or you follow something like me, and even with me, I'm not like we don't have a bad reputation, but even like the Sump Ultras, I'm not like them. I've been raised in Melbourne, so I'm not going to have an identical mindset to them. It's just a matter of speaking. But the great shame about Italian football is that there are many positive features. In recent years, there have been chances to rebuild the image of Italian football. I think from a footballing perspective, we're starting to see some good signs. Unfortunately, the whole issue with racism and territorial discrimination is one of the things that has really blighted the image of the Italian game. Whether it's discriminating players because of their skin color, or because they originate from Africa, or things like that, that's been a shame. I think it's not tolerance, but we need to develop acceptance of these players and appreciate them for the good that they've done for the league. Appreciate what's great about them as footballers. And it's even the same with the old North versus South divide. Don't just say, oh, this guy's a Northerner, this guy's from the islands, this guy's from the South. I mean, Italy, look, has been in the United Nations since 1861, but there's so many good things. So it doesn't matter if, it's been about the Roman Empire, or Italy's had different, invaders, things like that. But there's so many good things about Italy as a nation and as a people, and that's how it should be celebrated. And even in football, the same. Regardless of what part of Italy people are from, I think we should appreciate them for the great footballers. So the attitudes have to start changing, not just for the sake of the image of the sport, but also just for the image of the nation and just being better human beings all around. I mean, these are professional footballers. They've got a chance to play. And if we're talking about Kessie and Bakayoko, I mean, you look at Kessie in particular, he's been fantastic for AC Milan. The fact that he's of a different skin color or originates from the Ivory Coast shouldn't be an excuse to bully him or target him or insult him. He's an opponent, but you got to appreciate him for the good things he does. He did miss a penalty, but in general, he's a great penalty taker, and he's just such a hard worker for them. For the Rossoneri, he's an absolute star. So I think he's someone that deserves respect. And any foreign players who play well in Italy, I think they deserve praise for the talent they are, not because of the background, ethnicity, or the religion. This is football. Let's stick to the football.
Yeah, you guys are both spot on. Every time I hear of another racist incident in football, and it really, I know we're singling out Italy here because we're talking about Italian football, but this happens everywhere. This happens in Spain. It happens in England, France, and it happens everywhere, unfortunately. And unfortunately, what has to change is the mindset of the people to advance equality forward. And not to say that here in the United States, we don't have racism here. I feel like racism in sport is much more prevalent in Europe than it is here in the United States. And we've seen it time and time again. You guys have mentioned a bunch of not great, but infamous moments in football, in calcio. I think Jerry, you were alluding to, it was Cagliari last year that had the racist incident. And this is the mindset of the people. And by people, I mean fans. This is not a Cordova thing. This is not an ultra thing. This is a people thing. And that mindset needs to change to be able to change the racism that's going on. And, the problem is FIFA and UEFA, their solutions always throw money at it. It's a Band-Aid or whatever. They never do anything constructively to change the mindset of the people. And that's what has to happen. At the same time, Jerry, you being singled out or called a racist because you support Lazio is bananas. I mean, you've got to be some kind of special idiot to equate those two. I mean, seriously, it's nuts. That would be like saying for me that I'm a racist because I support a Northern Italian team and I should support the Southern Italians. I'm Sicilian. I mean, come on, the Sicilians have been kicked around. There's a line literally just north of Napoli. Anything south of that line, the Italians view as trash, and anything north of that line, and this is going back hundreds of years. There's a mindset that needs to change culturally in the people of Italy, the people of France, the people of Spain, or whatever, or England. There's a mindset that needs to change to be able to start to build a better experience for the players, for the fans, the ultras, whatever you want to call it. But the racism stuff is just, it's got to go, and people have just got to wake up and realize that we're all equal, and we're all equal on the pitch, we're all equal off the pitch. Get over it and let's move on.
No, absolutely, and you guys provide great feedback, opinions on the matter. I think we'll end it off with what Gerald's asking us, and we'll go to a lighter topic, and it's the European predictions. We got. I actually don't even know who the heck is playing this week. I'm gonna be honest with you guys.
I'm pulling them up right now as we.
Sorry, Gerald. I've been so focused. We're just gonna look at the Italian teams. We don't care about anybody else, to be honest.
So tomorrow you've got Malmo Juve and you've got Atalanta Villarreal. And then on Wednesday, you have Inter Real Madrid and Liverpool AC Milan. So, do you guys want me to go first?
It's up to you. Go ahead.
I'll step over the line. That's fine. Juve wins. I'll even go 3-0. Atalanta, I think, are going to pull out a 1-1 draw against Villarreal. When you move on to Wednesday, Inter, they're playing at home. They're playing at the San Siro. Inter win 1-0 over Real Madrid, if that's a big upset. And I'll take Liverpool to win 2-1 over AC Milan.
Okay. How about you, Vito?
Oh, well, I might be a bit more negative than Joe, to be honest. Yeah. Look, Juve should beat Malmo. That's no problem, 2 or 3-0. But I think with Inter's game and Milan's games, I'm expecting draws. I mean, I think it'd be a tough season for Italian teams in general, and they have hard groups in the Champions League. So, yeah, at the moment, I'm going to be very pessimistic. But I would much prefer to see Joe's predictions come true. I hope that they prove me wrong, and the Serie A clubs put in a good showing this season.
I'm going to go with Juventus winning, only by margin. I'll say 2-0. Juventus, when it comes to Champions League, I think this will be a different Champions League team without Ronaldo. I think it'll be a different mindset where 11 players will play among 11 people and fight for each other. And I think you're going to see a different mentality. The old Juventus, prior to what Ronaldo was there, I think that might start to creep in. And I think people need to keep that in mind. I like Villarreal. I think that Unai Emery is just a genius. I think that Atalanta, I think they have too many injuries right now. Like, the form is not great to start the season. I wasn't convinced with them on Saturday against Fiorentina. Like, I've never seen a team waste so many chances. So they only have 2 goals in 3 games. And I know that they're used to slow starts, but maybe a slow start this time around is not a good way to go into the Champions League for them. So for that matter, I'm going with Villarreal, say 2-1. AC Milan, Liverpool. I'm gonna go with a tie here. I'm impressed with Milan, and I think that I wouldn't be surprised if they won this game personally, because there's just something. I don't care about experience. Simone Inzaghi last season showed that experience means crap. In their first game, they dominated Borussia Dortmund from start to end. Now, there weren't fans and they played at the Stadio Olimpico, but still, they came prepared. And I think that Stefano Pioli, like I said earlier in the show, does not get enough credit, and I feel that he will have Milan prepared and ready for this match. They come off very good form to start the season. I think that's very important going into the Champions League. For that matter, I'll go 1-1 Milan and Liverpool, and they rotated their squad very well against Lazio. A lot of key players were rested. Olivier Giroud didn't play, which is massive. Simon Kjaer didn't play on Sunday, another healthy body. So, and the last one, I'm going with Inter winning 2-0 versus Real Madrid. Alessandro Bastoni will return to the lineup. Um, Simone Inzaghi gets his chance to finally prove what he can do with a better team, more depth in the Champions League. I've always rated Simone Inzaghi. I personally think he's top two manager in Serie A. He will get it right. He will rotate when he needs to. I think on Sunday was his first mistake this season, where he brought in Stefano Sensi. Kind of a mistake, kind of not a mistake, because you have to play him, but he didn't know that he was going to get hurt. I think it was kind of an unfortunate circumstance, but that's not going to happen again on Sunday. I'm sorry, on Wednesday. I just think you'll have the right mentality. This is not going to be a Conte type style team where he's going to go with the preferred 11. He's using Vidal off the bench, becoming more of an effective player. He's approaching his team better, and they're not going to be Romelu Lukaku dependent. And I think that's what's made Inter more effective in their first three games. So for that matter, I'm going 2-0 against for Inter versus Real Madrid. I'm not convinced with Real Madrid. Then again, I haven't really watched much of the Liga, so I can't really judge them and say what they're going to be able to provide. So I'm going to go on the one side of mind, and those are my predictions. And then off topic, I'm just going to give anybody who is a betting person here a free pick, and I think there's a lot of good value tomorrow. Maybe, Joe, you watch the Bundesliga, right? I really personally like Wolfsburg to beat Lille on the road. They're on my app, they're 270, and Lille is 255. I don't like the way I personally watch a lot of League On. Love the League On league. I think that it's not a farmers league. So anybody who says that, remember, half the players that you buy come from the freaking League On. So the only problem what makes the League On so bad is PSG. If PSG were non-existent, the league would be more competitive and much better. But that's a whole other argument. I like Wolfsburg because Lille has started the season very bad. The coaching change has really hurt them. Gautier going to Nice, I didn't expect it to make that much of an impact. It has drastically made an impact. They just dropped points to Lorient on Friday, I think, or this past weekend. They lost 2-1. So many drop points to start the year. They just don't look good. They don't look that really competitive like they were last year. And anybody who's betting tomorrow, I would say Wolfsburg is the pick to make. A lot of good value there.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. You look at, like you said, what Lille lost in the transfer window, not only losing Christophe Gauthier to Nice, but, they lost Adama Samaro. They lost, I'm looking at it now, Boubakary Soumare. That was the one I actually wanted to give you. And obviously the goalkeeper, Mike Magnan, who went to AC Milan to replace Gigio Donnarumma. They were damaged as a team. It was funny. We just talked about this with Jonathan Johnson from CBS Sports. There wasn't the fire sale at Lille that you saw at Marseille, that you saw at Monaco in recent years, but they did have a little bit of a picking where they kind of got picked apart a little bit. And the key for them, though, is losing Gaultier on the bench. That was a massive loss for them. On the other side, Wolfsburg are currently top of the table in the Bundesliga, 4-4. So yeah, I mean, I like your call of Wolfsburg winning that match outright. Is that match? I got to go back and look. I don't know if that match is in Wolfsburg or if they're playing it at Lille.
They're playing in Lille. I still don't care.
Yeah.
I don't. That doesn't bother me because Lille has lost a few games at home.
Mm-hmm.
Two teams. They lost. They beat Montpellier, which was their only win this season. They dropped points to FC Metz. I watched that game. They were so lucky to score in the final minute of that game because of a mistake by Metz where they didn't take the ball to the corner, and it resulted in a turnover in the last second of the game. They scored. It was a really good game to watch, actually. They lost to Nice the following week 4-0 at home. They followed up with a draw to Saint Etienne, one versus Montpellier. That was their first win this season, and then they lost to FC Lorient. This is not the same team. It's a team that's going up and down, and I don't even think they're being in the European position this season. Like it's,
and unfortunately, we've seen this happen in France a lot. Where a team runs up and does something magical like this, like wins the Ligue 1, and then they get picked apart, and then they're back down towards the bottom again. And it's just another case of it. They don't even come in healthy. Just looking at their team roster right now, Renato Sanchez is currently injured. Jonathan Bamba's injured. Timothy Weah, the American, is also injured. So they also come in a little on the banged up side. I think your call on Wolfsburg winning this one is spot on.
Yeah, because I told Alex Donald on WhatsApp, I was like, hey, you like to bet, and I don't like to bet because I'm a bad luck. Anything I touch, just go the opposite, guys. So except for, and I mean not when I call it on the show, but if I actually physically bet it, you go opposite, and you'll be making money all day, because I am the biggest mush. But that was just one game I saw that looked really interesting. But guys, I want to say thank you for coming on. You guys have been great. Great feedback, great insight on Sampdoria from Vito, great insight from Joe on Juventus, and just everything that you guys provided. Great content these guys really produce and continue to put out. Joe, where can people find you?
For me, my Twitter handle is right there on the screen at JPUcello. Also, I've been the host of Low Limit Football Podcast. We just celebrated 8 years. 335 episodes, I think, so far. So going along and strong at Low Limit Football there. And those are really the places you end up finding me.
8 years, that is impressive. If I ever get to 8 years, I'll be sending a Manscaped brand new package to Alex Donald as a gift for him. That's all I Vito, where can people find you? Have you been going for 8 years as well? Because that is an impressive. That's impressive, man.
Yeah. Well, I've been with the Forza Italian football for nearly 9 years, but I've been on it and off with the podcast probably, I'd say, 8 years. And probably for 4 years, I've been a regular contributor on the pod. So people can find me on Twitter at Vito C. Doria. Otherwise, you can go to the Forza Italian Football website to read my articles and also listen to the pod through there. We're also on Spotify, like most other podcasts. So if you're on Spotify, you can listen to the pod through there as well.
And you can find me at jmancini8 and Calcio Connection at CalcioCompod. I always forget the Twitter tag, but for some reason this time I finally figured it out. And for myself, just some match reports I've written for Inter and Lazio. That's it. But guys, give these guys a follow, please. You won't be disappointed. Thank you again for coming on, guys. And everybody, have a great night.
Good night, everyone.
Night.